the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AVNation is brought to you by Sennheiser.
It's Tim Albright with AVNation, taking a look at the women in the AV industry. I'm your host, but I am not the most important part. The most important part is my guest on the other side, not quite of the country, Kristin Salenger with Shin Milsum. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. I mentioned Kristin is in the beautiful state of Colorado. I'm in St. Louis. I got nothing there, right? She's got mountains, and I have the great muddy Mississippi. So... which, you know, Mark Twain and all that jazz, and yes, people wrote songs and crap, but not quite like, you know, John Denver and Rocky Mountain High. So now that I've really gotten off the track here, I met you, I've not met you in person, I don't believe.
Oh, not yet.
But I met you through our friends at Future and the event we did, the AVN2 event. And I have always been fascinated with acoustics, right? It's part of the industry that I probably know the least about, but I think is fascinating. And just listening to you and listening to you both kind of off the air, you know, just you and I chatting beforehand, fascinating by how you kind of ended up here and just the way that you see a space, right? And you're able to help clients like, okay, that's lovely to look at. Now let's talk about how it's going to sound, right? And the way that you're able to do that. So, typically we would ask like kind of how folks got into the industry, and I do want to start with that, but I also want to like maybe dovetail off of that into how you got into acoustics to begin with.
Oh, it started with music.
Okay.
Most acousticians are musicians on some level. Started out as a band geek. I played tenor sax and I played piano. Loved it as a kid. Continued into college, but I think. That kind of curiosity about sound and having then also maybe some scientific proclivities. I loved taking physics and calculus in both high school and college as well. If you can exceed at those, and then you have kind of this sense that, you know, your oral environment, what we hear, how we hear it, why it sounds like it does. I just had some curiosities about that. So I started out in electrical engineering, and honestly, it wasn't really clicking with me. So I was flipping through the college catalog. I went to a Big 12 university, and that has 400 majors, and I found acoustics. And I thought, gee, and it was in the College of Engineering. This sounds like something I could really get behind. And sure enough, every class I took was more and more fascinating. It was a lot of physics, a lot of calculus, some other kind of general engineering classes. And it just clicked. I like to say it's kind of like that Good Will Hunting quote where, you know, sometimes people can just look at a piano and play. I could figure out some of the calculations. The basic calculations that support acoustic science are just stuff that just makes sense to me. So sure enough, I also kind of had a thing for construction. And then, gosh, when I figured out I could be a consultant for the built environment, studying acoustics, helping apply acoustic principles, poof, I jumped in and haven't looked back. So I've been doing it for 16 years now, 3 different firms, and yeah, learn something new every day. At the same time, it's a lot of the same principles. Like I said, there's core kind of principles that support the acoustic as a science, and from there, it's really easy to kind of like get good at it, I think, and I think that's what kind of also applies to AV, that it's an industry that's constantly changing, but yet once you can kind of get the foundational knowledge of it, then yeah. So that's what I think I at least have in common. But that's how I kind of get into it. And like I said, I haven't looked back.
So there's a couple of things I want to go off on for a second here.
Okay.
First, and the tie between, you said most acousticians are musicians, right?
Yeah.
And I want you to comment on someone who played both the tenor saxophone and the piano, which, not for anything, but the saxophone is my favorite instrument of all time. It is just I played it as a kid, right?
Okay.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that my lack of talent in it is just led me to appreciate people who can do it. But I want you to tie into this theory or this belief that young people who have a musical bent or they're involved in music are also really good at math because of the tie-in between the music and the understanding the music and going into math. Is there something there, or was there something there with you that you found?
Not that I figured out at the time. I
Okay.
understand, and like, yeah, you're right. I've read about things that if you can, because of I think the mathematic support of even like chords and major chords and minor chords, syncopation and or the beat. That's all technically kind of a mathematic basis. So I don't connect it. I think of math and music as very different things. But no, that's interesting, and I've read that as well. But I wish I knew more about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. The other thing is, you said that acoustics is like AV, where it's constantly changing. Explain that to me, because in my brain, acoustics are acoustics, right? There are physics here, right? They're the unchangeable laws. How does that work?
Exactly. What's changing is the materials that we use to either attenuate sound, absorb reflections and or echoes,
Okay.
and the ways that we even build our mechanical equipment so that it vibrates less, there's less turbulence, which means there's going to be less noise. So all those things are slowly changing, and even trying to save on cost of materials. So we're using aluminum and we're used to steel, and gosh, what does that do in terms of an airflow of a fan and creating turbulence? So all of that is still changing. There's now, in terms of air handlers, as an example, I found this fascinating when this happened a little bit ago. Usually it's just one big fan that pushes air through filters and it's cooled and it's whatever. Now there's what they call fan walls. So it's maybe 16 smaller fans. And they did this, one, because now the whole thing doesn't break down. You have one fan go down, you can still kind of serve the building. On top of that, it's much more efficient. The flow is a lot more efficient. There's all these other things that they learned and discovered that, gosh, this helps a lot of different things, and they're quieter acoustically. So stuff like that is a good example of what's changing, and yet the basis is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a whole lot of sense. So you mentioned the fact that that kind of got you into acoustics.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact you worked for 3 different firms. Have they all been kind of AV-ish consulting firms, or has one maybe, how you ended up at SMW from the other 2?
Yes, all AV acoustics firms except for the third one that was strictly acoustics. But started out a small firm. They did acoustics and AV, and again, I just worked with a great team. Got into it. They challenged me. They let me be dumb sometimes and ask some of the stupidest questions I'm totally embarrassed that I used to ask. But at the same time, I figured it out. But then, got an opportunity to work with Fred Shen, who's he started his business in the 80s. And acoustical consulting, I think, has only been around since about then, maybe the 60s, 70s. It's really kind of been embraced by modern society. And acoustics as a science is also very kind of young. So I was kind of excited to work with Fred. And SMW is what it is. We are 5 total disciplines, 8 offices in the U.S. So I really like the variety of projects I get to work on.
Why do you think that acoustics is so young? Because as a discipline and as kind of an accepted discipline where architects, consultants will bring you guys in as here's an SME, here's a subject matter expert, and someone that we need, as opposed to maybe 100 years ago, we're like, make everything marble, it's pretty, whatever.
That's a really good question, because you're right. People have been designing amphitheaters for thousands of years, and they just went with what they got, I guess, which is fascinating. And you're right. So structurally, you needed to figure out how to build a building and have it stand up and not fall over. I guess acoustics, people did just think that maybe maybe they didn't realize how much control they can have over the oral environment, like they do the visual environment. Gosh, now I know what I'm going to do this weekend is Google that.
Google that. All right. Well, if I'm nothing else, I'm at least good for that. One of the things that I've highlighted on this program specifically is, I have said publicly several times, I kind of get where I am and I know what I am, right? I am a 100% cis white, male, right? That's 100%. I don't face a whole lot of challenges when it comes to folks actively or just, subconsciously keeping me from doing certain things. And I know a lot of women in the industry specifically, but also outside the industry, who have had those experiences. What sort of challenges have you faced, whether that was coming up through school or in the work environment, over the last 16, 17 years?
I think there are just lingering stereotypes about who can and can't do math, and or even just understand scientific concepts. In high school, I was lucky enough to have supportive teachers, and I found myself even trying to encourage my friends, because I was the one that was always trying to, play on the computer. This is in the 90s, and PCs were just kind of getting into schools for a regular use. And like, come on, you guys can understand this. We're creating a Word file. And they struggled. So I think when it was in college was my first, so I had supportive teachers up until that point. And my father is also from a technical background. He worked at a computer company. He let me kind of investigate on my own terms and kind of my own pace a lot of different kind of technology jobs or scientific things. I got lucky enough to get an internship when I was in high school with John Deere and learned from the manufacturer itself of how they structure their engine components and their transmissions of the tractors to make them so huge and powerful. I thought that was really interesting, and I'm so glad, like my parents even decided, that if you're into that, let's do it. College was tough because I did have some professors of some of my engineering courses, and obviously I'm one or two females are in a class of 200 men, and some of the professors would just have these offhand comments of, hey, you look like you work on cars, like you look like a big strong guy. What do you think about this concept of doing this to your transmission, or whatever it was? And feeling like because of my gender, I can't answer a question about how to change the oil of a car, just made me more angry than anything. And luckily, I didn't get discouraged. I knew what I knew, and I was confident that, yes, I can talk about cars, I can talk about sports, I can talk about math. And just because it just came so easily to me. And thank goodness I figured out what I wanted to do, and that the fact that I could be good at it at a pretty young age. So it's one of those things about kind of trusting your own judgment and trusting your skills. And when something is challenging to you, and yet you feel, that sense of kind of productivity and even pride in the fact that, man, I figured out this really hard problem, or whatever it is that you like to do, go with it. And don't give up, and don't let people talk you out of it, because my goodness, like you'll hit obstacles. So my first job, I would say, again, I got into a more supportive environment, but I think I had to prove myself a little bit first. And whether or not that was me kind of internalizing some things, or whether they thought, oh, a female, but in acoustics, I guess I kind of passed the bar at that point. But I did. I think I had to kind of going above and beyond maybe some of my male counterparts. And to this day, I know that some of my female colleagues are not getting paid as well as their male counterparts when they're coming in with maybe a master's degree versus not. And that's something that I'm passionately trying to figure out and get behind, and finally find some equality in a lot of those realms.
Yeah. When you look back and you see some of the things that you had to overcome, and I'll pick on the professors for a second, right? And certainly, you and I were going to the college roughly in the same time. You were certainly younger than I am on this, but 90s into 2000s, still some pretty baked in prejudices when it comes to especially on the math and the engineering side. Why did you decide to overcome those? Why did you decide to kind of stick that out and kind of show those professors that, yes, Kristin knows exactly what she's talking about?
Well, I actually ended up becoming kind of friends with each of my classmates each semester. My friend group kind of changed because we were studying together. And whether or not just that little extra bit of assertiveness helped me get in with some male classmates, and I saw that I was doing better than them grade-wise, and I was explaining things to them while we were doing homework together, more times than not. So from there, I was just like, gosh, like fluid dynamics. That was my favorite course in college. And I was the one kind of helping mentor several of my classmates, male and female. This is how we're going to get through this. And just trying to explain it in different ways, using different examples from the textbooks. And I thank goodness I had just that hard data of, Kristin, this is making sense to you. And your other 4 classmates, it's gibberish too. And then I maybe just got even better at it, how you're supposed to explain something in order to learn it better yourself. So I think that's kind of what helped reinforce some of that knowledge. And then from there, it just kind of took off. That I was just getting the evidence kind of right there and then. I'm getting the better grades than some of my classmates. And like I said, explaining concepts to them.
Just because I'm curious, because I have no idea what on earth you just said as far as fluid dynamics.
Yep.
What is that?
That is the study of fluid materials, so gas and fluids. Let's say you have a certain, volume. It's going to go down a certain diameter pipe. You have to account for the friction losses as the fluid interacts with the pipe surface as it flows. So like there's changes in flow and turbulence because the center of the pipe is kind of unencumbered rather than this fluid that's interacting with the pipe. I'm trying to think what else. It was a lot of things like that about pressure and flow and temperature changes, how that affects volume, a lot of those sorts of just random things. And again, it was like 5 different equations that you just kind of apply throughout the entire semester. So that's a simplistic explanation, I guess.
I appreciate the simplistic part because, again, I have no idea. I think the last math class I had in earnest may have been my freshman year of college, which is a couple of decades ago. So not quite. Maybe, yeah. Well, a couple of days ago. You mentioned a couple of things, and I think I know some of the answers to this. But when you look back, at your career, several years from now, at your retirement party, or maybe the weekend afterwards when you're chilling out and said, "Holy crap, I'm retired." What do you want to see have changed in the industry?
I don't know. It's a question of it's probably 3 major things. It's a question of transparency about why people are being hired and why they're being paid what they are. Some equal opportunity. I think at some points, even personalities. And gosh, if I want to kind of even go outside of our industry and say elementary school kids need better support for their math and science educations because we are not pushing everybody and challenging everybody equally. I think some people throw up their hands and they just say, I can't understand this. And then they convince themselves that they're terrible at math at a very young age, which I think is too bad because it's not the case at all, I don't think. Yeah. So it's changing the education system. It's changing the level of transparency in terms of hiring and compensation. And then even figuring out and even supporting people better with training, because we are in such a niche industry. Acoustics, we don't even have a PE license anymore. We're not recognized by a lot of engineering organizations as almost legit. NCEES, which is the official kind of licensing entity in the country, doesn't have anything acoustics in it. So things like that where I wish we could bring back licensings, because there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there that want to soundproof everything. And that's not how it works. And it's not easy by buying, some mass-loaded vinyl and, putting it on a resilient channel. It's a bit more than that. And people want a simple answer, and I can sympathize with that. But gosh, we need to legitimize some of these things because people don't get it and people are getting taken advantage of.
So the part of this question then, the other side of this is, how do you affect that change? How do you make, and you said a couple of different things that were really great. So and you can take both, I don't care. How do you do the STEM education early on and encouraging? But you said that second part of that answer is fascinating to me, because I had no idea that acousticians were not seen as wizards, because that's what I think of you as, because of what you're able to do. But seriously, and I've told you this kind of off the air, I think what you do is fascinating, and maybe it's just my own productivity, my own personal bias here, but I think I look at you guys a lot like the RF folks. It is a wizardry that I do not understand. And yes, some of it is the fact that my brain doesn't work that way, right? And when it comes to math and sciences, and I'm okay with that, right? I am okay with that. But again, I look at you guys a little bit like wizards. The fact that you guys aren't taken so seriously really kind of shocks me. How do we get there? Like, either you or how do other folks in the industry do that?
I'm actually in the process of trying to petition certain states to open back up. Unfortunately, we are still, I think, small enough. We don't have enough manpower to really do it, to get those voices. Like, we could have every acoustician in the country sign a petition. Hey, we want all these states to officially license acoustical engineering, but that's still maybe a couple thousand people. It's not like mechanical engineering. It's not like structural engineering. We just don't have the people behind us. So maybe it's almost kind of like the fight that females, we need male empowerment almost. We need friends that are males to help fight for us, because of us females that band together and scream, till our lungs hurt, we still need some male help because we are a bit of a minority in the industry for now. So, and that kind of goes across all industries of women trying to get into STEM industries, get into technical things that typically they hadn't before, and males into predominantly female organizations and professions as well too. So we definitely need the help of our male counterparts, but that's step one, is trying to petition it, and then just kind of thinking together logically of why it's actually needs to be legitimate. And the snake oil salesman point I made is one of the major things, that it's really frustrating for people to be getting misinformation about acoustics all the time. And I have to talk them back out of some decisions they've already made about, this is how I'm going to soundproof my basement, because I have a theater down there and my kid's nursery is above it. So I think that would be a first good step. But other than that, I think I've mentored in the past before. ACE is the architecture, engineering, construction mentoring that you interact with high school students, and just figuring out how to get that bigger voice out there, that acoustics is a thing, and you could probably be really good at it if you like math. And there's so many students out there that don't even realize this was a job. I didn't realize I had this job that I have is one until a year after I graduated. So it's got to be a marketing campaign. But again, if we don't have enough folks in the meantime, I don't know. I'll take your help, Tim, please.
Well, no, you made some really good points there, right? It's not unlike the AV industry in general, right? And I'm not trying to kind of lump you guys in, but it is some of the similar issues that the industry it has talked about for years, right? This is not new, right? How do we get young people? How do we do that? And the fact that the vast majority of AV professionals fell into it, right? They were musicians, they were this, they were theater. I was a theater geek, right? Okay. And so that's when we look at some of those same issues, I think that what you're doing, right, is fantastic. But you still talking to the high schoolers, right? Getting in there, whether that's with ACE or some other group, the ability to come in and go, okay, do a high school presentation to a band, right? To an orchestra. Yeah. You guys are already in there, right? Or to the kids that are good at math and science. So yeah. I think so.
Yeah, my dad for a time was trying to get me to petition to my hometown school district board to say acoustics should be like a section even in the physics curriculum. And how do we do that? And I was like, this is exhausting, trying to get into the political bureaucracy of education, because it's so fraught and everybody's already overloaded. So it's an uphill battle, unfortunately. Yeah. But
I have other issues with school boards and curriculum, but I will not get into
that.
Kristin Salenger, thank you so much. How do people connect with you if they are so inclined?
I'm on LinkedIn, Kristin Salenger. You can find me, like I said, SMW. And that's really, find me on LinkedIn, please.
Yeah, and Kristin has been very, very kind with her time with me, as I kind of she really is, what she does is freaking fantastic. So check her out on LinkedIn. For Tim Albright, for AVNation, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find programs like this and a host of others. And like I said, we started this back in March, and we've gotten a really, really good response. Lots of really great women in the industry have given us their time, and go out and check them out, and we'll be looking for more. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.